So then my third tip is to craft good stories. And why stories? Well, it's been proven that people relate much better to stories than they do to straight facts. And not only that, they remember them a lot better. So stories are really important, and I'm sure you've probably heard a lot about storytelling. It's been a big trend in the industry, but it's important for a reason. I mean, stories are really important because they also create an emotional connection with people. I mean, if you watch 60 Minutes or CBS Sunday Morning or 2020, what is common to all of them? They're all about stories, right? And they bring you in and they engage you. Stories are really important. So telling stories about projects, why you got the project, what challenges you had to overcome. Maybe there's something interesting about the client or the user or the operations or the materials, something. It really goes beyond facts and then gives the project a little bit of color and a little bit of life. So they're a really great way to build relationships with potential clients and attract people to your firm. And just as your projects have stories, so do your firms. Now, a lot of firms name themselves after the founding partners. There are a lot of acronyms in the industry right now. So SOM, for example, which was Skidmore, Owings, Merrill. We've really become, a generation of letters, simple letters. But in the case of this firm, if they had named the firm after their founding partners, the name of the firm would have been Gutteri, Martin, Stern, and Shriver, right? Really engaging. Not. So what they chose to do is to name their firm after a concept, and they chose Strada, which is street in Italian, because they really felt that it encapsulated the nature of the firm and what they did best. And we think that this story of the firm is really critical because it gave them the opportunity to talk about why they came together and really what they do together. So that's a terrific example in our opinion. And I'm sure that if you thought about your firms, you could come up with that, what is that story? So just as this image shows, you will never have just one audience, you will have many. And so you always want to target your messages to different groups. So you have your potential clients, you have your existing clients, you have your decision makers, you have maybe your peers, and then you have your broad network of barnyard animals. So, okay, you know what I mean. So what do communications with all of these audiences have in common? The most important thing is that it's about them. It's really not about you. So what you want to do is to understand their business. What they want you to do is understand their business. And if you really want to connect with them, there's just no substitute for language that's free of jargon, clear and to the point. So as I said before, you have to customize your language to your audiences. This is showing a group of people over here, and they're looking very glum, and they're looking at this chart, and the numbers are desperately going downwards. It's very depressing and worried looks. And then in walks the PR guy on the left side. He's holding the same chart, but holding it upside down. And it says, hold everything. The PR department just sent over this chart. So the point I want to make here is that you really can pitch different stories about your project, right? Maybe turn them upside down. I don't know. The good news, and that's the good news. I mean, here I'm showing an example. This is something that we did for a mall in California. And we got the same project in a real estate publication, a design publication, and then a trade publication for retail. So it's easy when you're talking about a project, you're thinking about a project, and you think about the design or technical story, right? That's the one that comes most easily to mind. But if you think about it, you really have the opportunity to tell multiple stories about the same project, which means that you can get a lot more, publicity for it, right? So if you're, I mean, take for example, this is one example of a mall, but if you were doing a hospital, you could talk about the patient experience. If it's sustainable, you could talk about sustainability. You could talk about the real estate story of a big building in an urban environment. You could do a profile on the firm or the designer. You know, the bottom line is there's just so many different ways to think about a particular project, so you really should think creatively. So we're all bombarded by email, right? I challenge anyone to say that he or she is not bombarded by email unless maybe it's your grandmother or my 10-year-old niece, right? We all get too much email. So, I mean, you have to think about that when you're sending something out, you're sending out information to a recipient, especially if it's the press. You need to think about it from their point of view. I mean, you get bombarded by email every day, so you want to make sure that whatever you're sending out, it's tailored to their perspective and the content is reaching that particular person, right? I mean, they're getting loads of email in their inbox, and if you're sending out a press release, the first thing they'll probably think is, you know, it's just another piece of email that I need to either, you know, try to read or delete. So you want to be smart about it so that the person you're sending it to doesn't automatically press the delete key. This comes from a project where we sent out a press release, and the press release was to announce the first renderings of a health center in Brooklyn. In addition, when we were talking to the architects and the client, we found that they had this whole story about the fact that there were no waiting rooms in the building. So, I mean, imagine you go to a doctor's office and you don't have to sit there and wait for an hour. I mean, you just go right in. So we did this graphic to illustrate how your entire visit at the doctor was going to take only 60 minutes, and that includes from the moment you walk in to the moment you're seen by a doctor and getting a prescription and leaving. So we did this separate, you know, we did this one pager separate from the press release, because when you're sending out a press release, you don't want to mix too many things. It shouldn't be a kitchen sink. It should focus on one particular story, because people get confused when you try to, you know, put too many things in one release. However, we wanted to make sure that the press had information if they also wanted to talk about this particular story, and we thought this was a good way of illustrating it. So if you're going to send out a press release or a pitch or news, you know, about a particular project, think about a couple things. First of all, what kind of headline would grab the attention of the media, right? The headline is really, really important. And then what is the one key idea behind the news item or story? What is that? If you could distill it down to one particular idea. And then, is it timely? And then finally, how will it attract people back to your firm? You want to make sure that the story is about you and not the client and not one of the other consultants, but how does it attract people back to you and what you did on that particular project? So when do you do PR? Well, you know, in the past, in the olden days, we always keyed it to a particular milestone, which we still do. You know, that can be when you win a project, when you when you set out the first renderings, when there's a groundbreaking. It's even better when there's a groundbreaking ceremony to celebrate. Get a picture with the shovels, that's great. And then when a project's complete. And those are all really important. The great thing is now with social media and, you know, cell phones, you can really promote the project throughout the life of the project. So you can talk about the process, you can show construction photos. You don't necessarily have to wait for those milestones, although they are really important. When you're talking about a project, think about, I mean, God forbid how it relates to the real world, right? I mean, we get very focused on the AEC market and the industry, and we think about how it relates to those milestones. But say, for example, you were doing a school, you might want to talk about the project in August when people are doing back to school stories. Or if it's a sustainable project around Earth Day. tag it to something that will have some real world relevance, or around a particular holiday. That's a really great way to, stretch the your PR effort. And that's what journalists call, quote unquote, a time peg. So also, another time to do PR is, God forbid, is in a crisis. And this is the building that caught fire in Dubai on New Year's Eve. The point is that you need to be prepared, and you need to have some sort of plan in place if something like this happens. You need to make sure that everybody is on the same page about what you want to say and then what you can say. So you have to be extremely careful in these situations. I mean, the worst thing you could do is have 3 different people saying different things and no one really kind of vetting that and talking to each other. The other thing is if something happens to another firm, and say a bridge collapse, and you're an engineering firm, you may be called on by the media to comment on that. And you have to be a little bit careful, because of course you want to demonstrate your expertise. Sometimes you may not have all the information to understand why that bridge collapsed, but it's very understandable that you'd want to comment on it, but you may not be in the best position to do that. You also have to be careful, because you really don't want to throw your competitors under the bus, because that could come back to bite you later on. So you have to be very diplomatic in those situations. And then before I move on, I just want to give you a couple more tips about press releases, because they're really important. First, don't blast everyone you know. Just don't. I mean, if you start to annoy people with your press releases because they're not relevant, then the next time they get a press release from you, they're going to delete it. They're not even going to look at it, even if it's relevant. People, as I mentioned before, get so much email that they really want to feel special, but they want to feel like you thought about what you sent out. And we get so many mass emails from everything from all kinds of junk that we all delete all the time. So just be careful about that. You want to target your outreach. Second of all, it's much better when you're sending out a pitch or a press release to send a personal note. To look up what a particular publication covers, or look into their editorial calendar to see what they're covering, or to see what a particular writer has written about before. People will appreciate it, and they'll respond much better. I mean, even if you don't have a relationship with a particular person, if you've taken the time to understand who they are and what they cover, and you demonstrate that in your email, it will go a really, really long way with people. And then make sure that you're targeting the right publications. I mean, editors have told us over and over again that it really frustrates them if, for example, they get an email or a press release about a project that has nothing to do with the things that they cover. So if you're sending out a press release about a hospital, and you send it to a publication that covers single-family residences, they're just going to be annoyed. You want to develop relationships with the media. You really don't want to alienate them. So it's important to do your homework. It's very easy to press a button, but it's going to be much more beneficial in the long run to take the time to compile a press list and really be smart about it.